Hello and welcome back. You're back again down the red rabbit hole. It's getting really comfy and cozy down here. We're enjoying having lots of wonderful guests with us down here. It's still a bit cold. It's still a little bit dark. But we're moving in more and more treats as we go along. So thank you for coming back and sticking with us while we explore things down the red rabbit hole. Nicky, are you still here?
I am. I'm still here. I escaped briefly, I must admit, but then I came back. Yeah, I've been institutionalized by the rabbit hole. I couldn't make it out there in the real world. I just couldn't.
Did you just keep jumping into round-shaped holes wherever you went? You were like, "Oh, there's a
I
bin.
did.
Quick, get
Yeah.
in it."
It's like, oh, look in there. And that was the only
"And
way
the
I could
kids'
feel
tunnel,
safe.
go!"
Yeah.
And then eventually I found you at the kids' playground in their little hole, and I brought you back and made you feel safe and warm again. Back
Gently by the hand, you took me and you were
down.
like, come on, dear.
"Come on,
Let's get
my
you
dear,
home.
let's bring you back." I can't, we can't do it alone. I can't do it alone.
No. And we're not alone anyway. We still have a guest, don't we?
We do.
Mm.
Anngelle, are you there?
I'm here.
How's your week been down the hole?
Chaotic. I never stop. I never really take much of a break. Keep digging into other stories, and that leads to another one, and that leads to another
It's
one.
hard, isn't it? Because it's never
Yeah.
ending. It really is. If you've got the time, I mean, I'm a writer, and so I have to do a certain amount of research for thrillers in terms of like true crime
Mhm.
and how things work.
Mhm.
But it's a great
Yeah.
procrastination tool, isn't it? Because you feel like you're doing something. You're not, but you feel like you really are achieving something by going down these holes. And it's addictive as it is. If you were just like doing it for a laugh, it's still addictive. But you throw in the fact that I want to do anything other than actually write. I've got a rabbit hole
Yeah.
addiction, which,
And hopefully our listeners feel the same. Hopefully they've got a bit of a rabbit hole addiction and they keep coming back. And maybe they can let us know things that we could explore. What rabbit holes could they send us down? And we'll dig it out.
they could do. That would be great. Anngelle, on your podcast, do you get your listeners to kind of, I suppose, leave messages to say what crimes they want you to cover?
I get a lot of emails from people suggesting cases. Yes. Some of which I've heard of, and others that I had no idea about. So I start reading about them for what I can find about them. Some cases are tough. Some cases are tough to find stuff, but I certainly try to dig.
Yeah, it's and I think those are the really good ones though, is where there's not much about them, but every little bit you find then becomes like more shiny and more because it's the big cases that you can just go onto YouTube and see a documentary on.
Right. Right. The cases where, there's one case I'm researching right now, happened in 1947. You know how hard it is to find information from 1947?
What's the case? And just to let the listeners know, your podcast is Crime of the Truest Kind if they want to find you on Apple or any platform I think that you're on.
That's right. Yeah, I'm on all the spots. This is about a little boy who, back in 1947, this little boy's family moved from one town in Massachusetts to another. He was 12. He was still playing in his school band. So at 12 years of age, he was taking the bus back and forth to these places, which we couldn't imagine doing that now. A lot of parents couldn't imagine letting their 12-year-old do that. He was taking the bus to his band practice, which was probably maybe a 20-25 minute ride away. And they found him. He was missing. He didn't make it to band practice. They found him the next, several hours later in a field in the town next to where he would have gotten on the bus. And there's this little boy laying in the woods. And in 1947, of course, that is a circus, a media circus, as the media was at the time. And, all of these questions about who did this? Who could have possibly done this? And of course, his family, I'm sure, was investigated, and any of the people he may have seen during that time. And then all of the headlines from that period of time are, sex thriller, sex slayer. There's one story about a sex degenerate. The way they wrote papers back then was actually pretty entertaining. But yes, this little boy was, still unsolved because they never got any hard, fast, concrete. They have people of interest, but unsolved still.
Mm. We were talking, Lisa, weren't we, about a similar case called the Red Riding Hood murder in Wales. We had a Welsh author on, and we were pitching her 2 sort of true crime Welsh stories to include in her next book. And mine was the Red Riding Hood murder, and that was of a little girl who was 12. She was murdered probably just maybe even just a few feet from her home in kind of rural Wales. And the creepiest thing, though, was that something was taken out of her backpack. It was never really revealed what it was. But years later, we're talking like now, somebody bought a old children's book from the 40s from a charity shop.
Wow.
And it had her name in it. Her name was Muriel Drinkwater. So it wasn't like it was a like a was it Muriel Drinkwater? Am I making that up?
No, I think that's right.
Yeah, I was sure that was
because
right.
it's not a particularly common name.
Yeah, it wasn't like Joan Smith or something.
Yeah.
And it had the date on it that it was given, and there was a bookmark that she'd made at Easter with her full name and everything on it. And it wasn't until the guy got home and looked it up and was like, whoa, you know, when you see a crime come up. So clearly that was the trophy that the killer took with
What
him.
is the time span? Do you know the time span from when she was killed to when they found the book?
It was in the 40s, and the book was perhaps early 2000s. So you're talking a good 60 years.
That book passed through a lot of hands, a lot of fingerprints in that book during that time too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there was no
No way.
evidence. I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, there was some DNA on the coat that they did manage to do. Again, there was lots of updates with this case, but they never solved it. So there was DNA on the coat that managed to exonerate someone that was considered the prime suspect, but it never obviously just led to anyone. We've got very funny laws here about forensic genealogy, which doesn't help us. We can only use the DNA from our prison databases. So if you've been convicted of a crime, your DNA will go into the national database. But if you're found innocent, it doesn't go in, and like the rest of us, it won't go in if we haven't been convicted of a crime. So it's a very small percentage of the population we can test against. We're not allowed to use commercial genealogy like you guys are in certain states.
Wow. And you're hoping to change those laws, I would guess.
Yeah, we can't change anything here. We can
Yeah.
barely change a
For
government
Brexit.
without everything apart.
Wow.
I don't think it's going to be high on the
Mm.
agenda,
No,
particularly. Do you?
No,
I don't
I
think they're going
don't
to be
think
thinking
so.
about that. No.
I don't even know what the reasoning was to do it in the first place, but there's a big long government document that I found that I thought I ain't gonna waste my time on this. I think I know what's going on.
Ah, shame you didn't make Prime Minister.
I know I should
Really
have.
should
No.
have. Really
I
should
think
have.
I'd have made a really good Prime Minister, Anngelle. I really would have.
I agree.
I said I'd only take a basic wage until all my promises, my election promises, were fulfilled.
And then you get a big bonus after.
Oh yeah, well, I'm like living in Downing Street, so it's not like I'm paying rent or anything. And their food's pretty cheap, isn't it, Lisa, in Westminster?
Yes, yeah, and the restaurant in Westminster, it's really, really cheap food. They can go, so not only do they get all the tax breaks, but also when the rest of us are paying out for lunch at work, day in, day out, they get really nice food at absolute rock bottom prices. It's really out of order. And I think at the moment, probably, I don't think it should be particularly high on the new government's agenda to be looking at our laws around forensic genealogy, and maybe a little bit more about making sure children are fed.
Yeah.
Just generally, and have homes.
Yeah, and stopping the housing crisis so people, can afford a home.
Yeah. Maybe afford to live.
Oh no, we're on the soapbox again. Let's get back off, because we have to talk about blood evidence, because that's where we left the listeners on.
Yeah, we've gone way off. Nicky, my learned colleague, Nicky. Nicky, barrister Nicky?
I don't
What
know.
are
Just
you?
Nicky. Just
Lord Nicky? Lady Nicky. Lady Nicky. Share with us your evidence.
I like Countess Nicky. I think that's got a good ring to it.
When you next talk to me, I want to be Khaleesi.
Oh, okay. That's very specific.
When I hear Nicky, the first thing I think of, and I mean no disrespect, is the Prince song Dirty Nicky.
Oh, no, I like that. I would adopt that as my theme tune.
Is that because Let's Get Political has not taken off yet?
No, it's not. Yeah, so
Bang!
Anngelle, I don't know whether you listened, but we came up with, Let's Get Physical.
Yes.
We came up with our own version around election time saying, let's get political.
Did I say dirty Nicky? I meant darling Nicky, but it is a dirty
Oh,
song.
darling.
So
It is a dirty song.
point made.
Again, I don't mind. I don't mind at all. So, blood evidence.
Blood
So
evidence.
you said your point, I'm
Mm.
not going to keep calling you learned colleague, my colleague.
My Queen Khaleesi. First of her name. No, there's many, many Lisas out there.
To Judge Wood, you said that there was blood evidence in terms of a dress that was burnt.
Well, I said
Yes.
there was no blood evidence because the dress was burnt, but that's the whole point.
That's the whole point. Okay.
Mhm.
So what I would put to the Judge Wood, or Judge Wood, not the Judge. Well, you are the only one here. Grammatically, I think I'm good. Judge Wood. The father was the last one to die, and it was reported that Lizzie went to the neighbour's house saying that her father had been murdered.
Mm.
And the neighbour reports seeing not a single drop of blood on Lizzie.
Mhm.
And then when
Mhm.
they arrived there, that the father was still warm.
Oh.
So in the time it took to kill said father and then change with all the petticoats and all the bits and bobs that were around at that particular time, that would have the body would have cooled somewhat by then. So I would put to you that there was no blood on any dress anyway.
And there's a lot of layers to go through. It's not like she's popping on a pair of yoga pants and running next door.
Exactly. There's lots of moist opportunities. Nope. There's lots of, there's lots of soaking opportunity. I don't know, but anyway, like you've pointed out, there's lots of layers that it's got to go through. So that's a lot of evidence. That's more than just a dress that you'd need to burn, but also the dress was explained away that Emma, that's her sister, it was actually a dress that she burnt. It wasn't anything to do with Lizzie, and she burnt it because it was covered in paint. She'd gone to her friends because she wasn't there that time. She was like 2 weeks away with her friends, and she'd burnt the dress with the paint. Although, to be fair, I perhaps wouldn't have burnt a dress with paint. I'd have just used it for knocking around the house, but that's just me.
Well, also a week after you've murdered someone, probably burning a dress is going to be quite low on your priority of things to do. Oh, that dress with the
Emma
paint on
wasn't
it.
there.
Let's get rid of it. No, because Alice Russell testified that it was Lizzie who burnt the dress.
But then Emma said that she did it.
And that was the friend, right?
So we've got a lot of contradictory evidence then as well, which again
We
doesn't
have.
look good because you have to have solid evidence to convict someone. You can't just convict someone on hearsay.
Well, I suggest my learned countess friend that
Yeah.
she was naked and she did the crimes naked
She wasn't.
and then
No.
threw her dress back on. And maybe she was really well practiced at putting on lots of petticoats.
Well, she was like a quick change artist.
Yeah, she'd done a turn in the theatre, vaudeville. I'm running out of time's completely out, and yeah, she was very good at quick changes backstage.
No.
Or Bridget helped her.
Okay, Judge Wood, bring some sanity to the proceedings here. What do you think?
Part of me feels like maybe there was some contention with the stepmother and the father walked in on something. So he may have been sort of some collateral damage to the case. At the same time, I am concerned with the presence of, blood evidence. Where was the housekeeper during all of this? And did they have much information about what presented in the house when how did the housekeeper learn about what had happened? Because wasn't there defense or wasn't there explanation that they hadn't heard anything going on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Both Bridget and Lizzie said they hadn't heard anything. Now, surely, from my point of view, and again, this is just a theory, as I would, I'm not putting evidence forward as theories, but if Lizzie had done it, wouldn't she say, yes, I heard a man's voice. Yes, I heard this. I heard that. And as a lady, she'd probably be believed, but she tells the truth.
Mm-hmm.
She says she didn't hear anything. And if she was outside I think she was eating pears and trying to find something in the shed, if that was the case, then she probably was nowhere near it anyway.
I wonder what the time frame was between all of these. I never was able to really find maybe it exists, like a time frame between when they were all supposed to have been murdered to when Lizzie Borden ran next door to tell. From what I understand, also she ran to there were doctors around her but they were of Irish descent, and it was very, very classist and very this is a very classist time. She had, as I understand it, she had means of people around her that could come and help, but she took sort of like the long way around it to go and find a doctor who was a local.
To be fair, looking at the photos online, a
Mhm.
doctor was just not going to help either of them.
No.
I think they were well and truly gone by then.
Looking at the skulls when they were presented in court, yes, their heads were.
Which was quite dramatic, really, wasn't it? I mean, I've never seen a case where that's happened before. And again, I think down to the kind of trial by media.
And Lizzie went, "Oh dear,"
and fainted. Well,
Mm.
you would, wouldn't you? For the skulls of your parents,
of the people you
when
murdered.
the
Yeah.
damage. No.
I don't think I'm going to make it in this career.
I mean, at the end of the day, and I'm going to put forward a more modern case
Mhm,
for this
mhm.
point as well.
Oh.
So, if you've just walked in on the corpse of your father
Mhm.
having just been murdered,
Mhm.
then you're going to have quite a scatty memory
Mhm.
of what's going on. You're going to go into a little bit of shock. You're perhaps not going to know where you're going. You're going to make a silly decision. And there was also kind of rumors that she was quite detached, that she couldn't quite get her story straight. And this was the kind of, and I'm putting the rabbit ears around this, the insubstantial evidence that was put forward that had no real bearing on anything. And the case I'd put forward to that is the Amanda Knox case.
Mm.
Everyone
Yes,
thought that she was guilty because she gave no reaction to anything. And that was just who she was and how she reacted to trauma.
Mhm.
And she was convicted on that and then subsequently acquitted. And that can be the biggest problem in these things, that if the police, seeing a case like this, I mean, this guy was, a prominent member of the community, you would say.
Yes.
He's very rich, very rich. And the police are not going to have dealt with many cases similar to this. And so they are going to latch on to the first thing they see. And if they see a very troubled Lizzie who can't really get her story straight because she's too traumatized, then that's the first thing they're going to say. Well, she was around here. Yeah, a woman can handle a hatchet. We don't like the idea of a woman doing this, but hey,
Right.
that's what, how else are we going to find the murderer? Because if the other scenario is true, then somebody else in the community has done this, which is not a great thought. But also the flip side is some random has done this, which they're never going to catch.
Who's now at large, probably running around their fishing town.
Yeah, and I would put another case
So-
forward as an example of that is the New Orleans Axeman.
I don't know that one. Is it an unsolved one?
It's unsolved.
Is that why I'm not on board? There you go.
He basically went around just killing random people with an axe that weren't playing jazz when he wanted them to.
What?
Yeah,
He wanted jazz on demand.
he wanted jazz. Yeah, it was his own version of Spotify.
Oh,
It
yeah, I
was
was going to
murder
say someone get him
Spotify.
a Spotify account, or even just put him on a YouTube shuffle or something. Really want to hear some jazz. Feel like I might go and chop someone up.
He
for
did
it.
the classic thing of writing to the papers saying that he was doing like an almost religious thing of, I will pass by a house that's playing jazz. If you're not playing jazz when I pass by, then I'll go in.
Oh,
Oh, blimey heck.
Yeah.
keep your damn doors locked. That's what I say.
Yes, keep your doors locked. Play jazz. Why not?
Yes, play music at all times. Anyone who has dogs, who people have to leave the radio on or TV on for their dogs, so that it feels like
I've done
someone's at home.
I've
Yeah,
done that.
yeah, just making sure that you've got Jazz FM on, just in case you're all right.
Netflix thinks I watch a lot of Full House, and I
It's
don't.
the dogs.
The dogs do.
I can see why they like it. It's quite, benign, isn't it? In terms
It's completely benign. Nothing happens that would upset anyone. There's no loud noises. But what concerns me a lot about this case is the way that the community rallied around her and why they rallied around her. She was a woman of, the family of prominence. She was a local there was a lot of that, what they call it, like nativism going on, like, well, we're from here and you're from somewhere else. So they were making distinctions along those lines. And the fact that she was a petite woman, also the inferences that because she was a single woman, maybe something was wrong. Single into her 30s, which everybody, so many of us now are single
What
into
a
our
hint.
30s. What? Childless at 32? What? That was not unusual for some women at the time. And women were starting to be able to choose education over marriage and family around that time, and what we're looking at, like the late 1800s, right? So there were some, even though it was so very long ago, and we looked at things and spoke of things and acted differently about things, there were women who were beginning to choose college first before family. And also there's the whole underlying, well, maybe she was a lesbian and she freaked out on her family, which isn't fair, because we know that being gay is fine. It doesn't make you crazy and a lunatic with an axe.
I always think about that picture of Lizzie, the one that you see whenever you look her up, is this crazy-eyed woman, isn't it? Who took that picture? That is not a flattering picture, though.
Oh,
Is it? It's
objection!
not one that makes
Objection! She is not crazy-eyed.
does not look demure.
She looks demure, yeah, but she doesn't look crazy-eyed.
A lot of frills.
But can you see then the amount of blood that would have gone on to all that garb? Still think there were other people around as well. There was a guy in the guest bedroom. I'm not sure he was there at the time or whether it was noted he was there at the time, but that the stepmother was killed in the guest bedroom. Also points to it. There was also conjecture about the boots on the dad, because it was supposedly that he had the boots taken off before he went to sleep, which would make sense. Nobody wants to sleep on a couch with their boots on. But then in the pictures, all the photos of the remains, the boots are on.
Yeah, he's slumped on that couch with his feet on the floor and no face. He is faceless.
He's faceless. But booted.
It's nice.
Booted and faceless, my new band.
I know this isn't really a wrap up or anything, but I just can't. This is my closing speech. Okay, I'm going to do the closing speech. Judge Wood, I put to you that Lizzie Borden was just a very convenient patsy for the police that had very little resources at their control, that weren't prepared to look any further than a traumatized woman who had seen the dead body of her father. I mean, we're not even including the dead body of the stepmom there, because I don't think she saw it until later on. And that, any hearsay evidence of how her relationship was with her parents, with any money that was involved, really has no bearing on this case. In terms of motive, the motive was very passionate with that many hits. And I do still believe that although they said that a woman could wield the hatchet, and the hatchet was found, well, the head of the hatchet was found in the basement, I still don't believe, oh man, I just screwed myself over there, didn't I? Because I said she still had the murder weapon.
Well, you're doing a better job than I am.
I didn't know it was found. I didn't know the murder weapon was found.
Part of it was the hatchet head was found.
Well, they didn't know, did they? For sure, that was police incompetence, because they said it looked like it had ash on it, but it looked like it had kind of been planted there. It wasn't like a natural buildup of dust and ashes in it. Had laid there for a long time. Somebody had sprinkled a bit on. She burnt her dress and she sprinkled a bit of ash on the axe head.
If you're going to do it, just throw it in the lake. No one's going to go there. No one's going to find it. Throw it in the lake and be done with it. So I think that was just a hatchet that had been perhaps put there many. Yeah, it was unrelated, I think, perhaps. And they just the murder weapon, so they grabbed it. See, we don't know the competence of the police that were running at the time. I suspect it wasn't great. And like I said, this is a murder that needed to be solved. And I would like to add as my final piece that 8 men,
Yeah.
they weren't a jury of her peers. They were 8 the pale male stale people. They all looked at her. So even the people that you'd think would be out to get a woman who perhaps now is going to have means, and they perhaps would think would do this to one of their own, in inverted commas, they acquitted her. So not even they could come up with enough evidence to convince them.
It was the public pressure as well, because she had so much support because of her standing.
Yeah.
And you're right about the jury. Women weren't allowed to serve on juries at the time. And there was protest around that because she had so much support. The women of the time, I forget the organization's name, however, who fought for voting rights for women were very upset by the fact that Lizzie Borden, this woman with, high standing and credibility, I suppose, in the community, would not face any women, that she would face only men. And I think because of all of that, because of her standing and because of the times and just because of the pain in the ass it all would have been, I believe that people on the courts think she probably did do it, but they didn't prove that she did it.
And that's the point, isn't it? There has to be to convict someone without a shadow of a doubt of their guilt.
Amen.
And there is no evidence to me. There's not a single shred of evidence proving without a shadow of the doubt that she did it. If I'd been on that jury, I couldn't have convicted her.
And you couldn't be on that jury.
None of us could have.
Not allowed. You're not allowed.
Not allowed. There. We can't have analytical thoughts, can we? We're not allowed to.
We weren't capable of swinging a heavy object and bludgeoning someone's head in. We're not capable of making decisions.
Did you see another rabbit hole? Sorry.
No,
the story of Candy Montgomery from Texas, the woman who, very normal, white bread Texas lady, axed her friend to death inside her Texas house.
Mm-hmm.
It was revealed that she had an affair with the woman's husband. They split up amicably, they got along fine, so there was nothing based on that, like she didn't want to be with him and murder his wife. Same thing. And there were 2 movies made about it, one starring Jessica
Biel. No?
Jessica Biel, yes. And the other one starring Elizabeth Olsen, one on Hulu, one on HBO Max, I think. That was the same story. Like, it's impossible. The towns were like, they're church-going folks, it's impossible. She could have never done this. And then she said, yeah, it was self-defense. And the town was like, what? Everybody went crazy because they couldn't believe that this soft, demure, woman, part of the PTA on the school, on this, doing all the things for the children at school and singing in the church choir. Impossible. She could have done that. And then when she said she did, and she wanted to, say it was self-defense, where in her mind it probably was. Candy Montgomery. It's a fascinating story because what makes it so fascinating, she was just this regular Southern, Texas woman, had nothing in her background to suggest that she was capable of any of this stuff, and found her friend chopped up.
Yeah, I think the Jessica Biel one is on Disney Plus over here in the UK, if anyone wants to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there is a distinct kind of, especially with the pale male style, they don't want to think outside of their own kind of terminology that a woman could commit these kind of crimes. Now, again, I'm arguing for the prosecution now, but there is that kind of, she wouldn't do it. And the one thing, Lisa, that you didn't.
Well, I was just about to say, are you going to talk poison?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm like.
Yeah, were you literally about to go? Because that's what I was just thinking about then.
Yeah, reportedly she wanted to. There's a story about how she tried to get some poison.
She tried to buy some prussic acid, a deadly poison, the day before the murders. And there are 2 witnesses who put her in the drugstore trying to purchase that. But I kind of wonder, because poison is thought of as much more as the woman's weapon, isn't it? And those people on the jury would have been thinking that's how she would have done it.
Yeah.
So maybe, but I think prussic acid, and I'm probably saying that wrong, can be used to like clean things as well. It's a cleaning agent. So
you can use it on, I think it was something like she'd said she was going to use it on a sealskin cape or something. I know, which is, I know that doesn't make her sound great. But at the time, yeah, I know.
Gross.
At the time, I guess,
I mean, think about it. Wouldn't that just be tidier? I mean, if we're thinking about Just think about other ramifications of that. No one wants blood on everything. You want a nice, clean, tidy murder if we're really, getting down to it.
They had all been ill, though, hadn't they? So within the home, blamed on some rotten mutton, which of all the meals that are going to go rotten on your oven,
Right.
rotten mutton. Ugh. Mutton's bad enough alone.
Yeah, but I thought it was one of the few things that lasted ages.
Oh, if it's gone off, then yeah. But that was the suggestion. And actually, wasn't it that Lizzie and her sister weren't unwell, but everybody else had been, and that was why Father came in for a little lay down, because he still wasn't feeling great. He'd been out for a walk, and then he came back to have a little lay down with his boots on, presumably because he was feeling a bit tired after the walk and the journey.
But Abby Borden had said that she reckoned the poisoning had come from the bakery in other things that I'd read, and that she blamed one of his. She'd actually said to the doctor the day before that she suspected someone was targeting her and her family because of her husband's business dealings.
Yes, there is that, isn't there? I read about that as well.
Yeah.
He wasn't popular.
They probably weren't equipped. Law enforcement during that time, I mean, let's face it, some towns aren't equipped today, but law enforcement probably was not equipped for what was being suggested when they started to look into this crime more closely. I imagine it was probably a great deal of work for them to make connections like that. Oh, there's possibly somebody after them that, murdered them for what reason? Not sure. Sketchy business dealings. Yeah.
Revenge, or you see, there's nothing that mentions actually his. That's a good point, Judge Wood. Just getting that in there.
Thank you.
That the business dealings were actually never really mentioned. I mean, what kind of dealings was he
That's
in
right.
at the time? I mean, if he was seriously like destroying somebody and was going to go through with like bankrupting a particular family, then yeah, that's a massive motive for somebody to pop in with an axe and give their persecutor 40 whacks.
Or pay somebody else to do it.
Pay someone else to do it. Yeah.
And they never, none of that surfaced. None of that sort of information surfaced from what I can see.
And also small towns. I mean, the gossip and things like that. It must have been really hard to kind of differentiate fact from hearsay anyway.
Oh, I bet. I mean, think about it. Everything was in the markets. We see each other nowadays. We're online and we're exchanging information online and it's in our feeds, but people talked at markets and at parties and at functions and events. And you know what that chatter is at the coffee shop. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that one? Hear about this one? Hear about that one? Yeah.
I mean, psychologically, gossip is what binds people. It's a bonding thing, isn't it? It's in terms of, you talk about someone like a third party together, and that bonds you to that other person, that you have the same beliefs or you have the same knowledge of something else. So it's a psychological, and I can't imagine, small towns are notorious for it. So Lisa, give us your closing then.
I've probably been won over by my learned colleague here to think that something else was afoot, but
Countess Nicky.
yes, so Countess Nicky over there has swayed me.
I've swayed this. Oh my God, I'm great. I should have gone into this.
Yeah, you should. It's a change of career for you. This
Turn
is a
the
new
prosecution.
You've turned the prosecution. Well, or I should have just done a bit more research, really. I probably should have gone a bit deeper down the rabbit hole myself so that I could present a better case here for you, because ultimately I'll close with the same thing I opened with, which was it was a bit all circumstantial, really, ultimately. And yes, there was plenty of reasons that she could have done it, plenty of motives for her to do it, but no actual evidence. I think the only potential evidence was the blue dress, which got burnt with the paint on it. And then you said that wasn't even her who was caught doing it. So that ruined that one. And she didn't have an alibi. So she was for, 20 minutes or possibly half an hour sitting in a stupidly hot barn. It was really, really hot in there. And apparently she was sitting up, or she said she was sitting up in the rafters eating some pears. So,
Who does that?
that's her alibi, which is rubbish. Because why? Oh yeah, I'm just going to eat some pears and I'm going to go and sit and eat them in the most uncomfortable place that I possibly could, because that's how I like my pears.
uncomfortable bed.
In the rafters of the barn. That's where my friends, when I was a little kid growing up, that's where the boys hid the Playboy magazines they stole from their fathers, and they would be up there looking in the rafters. There's also some belief, and I don't know how much this played out. This must have played out in the trial, that she wasn't really the one buying the poison, that somebody misidentified her. Take that for what it is, right?
Well,
Who knows?
there was no CCTV back then. So again, hearsay to
No.
me. If you haven't got the evidence that she was there, if she didn't sign, even signatures can be forged, but if she didn't sign anything, there's not enough witnesses to be able to say, yeah, but even then you could get 5 people say it was her because the other 4 said it. Or, to me, I just think the evidence is very much lacking here, mostly due to the fact that it was very primitive forensics anyway back then, and perhaps very kind of shoddy investigation. But to me, if the evidence isn't there, she didn't do it, whether she did or not. But to me, you can't convict someone without evidence. Innocent till proven guilty.
And even if they found anything later, I don't know if the double jeopardy law existed at the time in the US back in the late 1800s. Now, if you're now if you're acquitted of a crime, they cannot charge you again with different information.
Yeah.
Well, they never did charge her with anything again, did they? So perhaps that was...
No. She lived a very, I guess, simple life still in the area. She stayed in the area. She didn't stay in the house. She stayed in the area.
She changed her name, though.
For another many years. What does she call herself after?
Elizabeth. You're going to go for a name change from Lizzie to Elizabeth Borden. Still Borden as well.
I think it was Elizabeth. I read it was Lisbeth.
Oh, was it
So it
Elizabeth?
was close enough, but
Oh.
not probably. She probably didn't want to go through all the legal things of changing it to Marilyn or something. Or Pitts McGee or whatever.
Sandy, I think would have suited, yeah.
Lady Axelot.
I was going to say Axeline.
It would have been great if she went to play for like the roller derby or something, and she gave herself some ridiculous name.
The hacker.
The hacker.
Get out of my way. So, Judge Wood, what is your final verdict then on the Lizzie Borden case?
My final verdict is that though it's very, very possible that she did commit these crimes, there is not enough evidence to convict her, to send her to prison, despite the fact that she did serve some time previous to the trial. And that was far beneath her because, remember, she was a woman of society.
Wearing her sealskin cape.
Wearing her sealskin cape that she shined up.
Out and about town, buying poison.
I find that, over the many decades of hearing the story, we just simply believe it because it's been told to us so many times that, oh yeah, she gave her mother 40 whacks, which none of that is actually true, we've discovered. But there was no smoking gun, if you will, no bloody axe, no bloody hatchet in this case to say definitively that Lizzie Borden murdered her father and her stepmother.
No blood at all, one might argue.
And I believe that is the take that the actual sitting judge had at the time. They were like, well, she probably did do it for whatever reason. We just can't prove she did it.
If that was the case, then she was very lucky, because mostly they don't really care, do they? We think we think they did it, so doesn't matter about the evidence, we'll just convict them anyway, especially in small towns at that time.
And she left that house. I mean, we've heard all along how completely, tight her father was with the money. I don't even think they had like proper running water or anything inside that beautiful home.
And he chose to live in a particular area of town, didn't he? Which was an affluent area, but they could have lived in a much nicer house in a much nicer area.
There was a place called The Hill, which is where all the higher society, clearly, because you got to live on the hill to look down at the common man, right? The common folk. And those are the people that came to her defense, surprisingly. They didn't want to get whacked with the
No.
axe. I mean,
That's why they all played jazz from then on.
it's the devil you know.
She wasn't scared of her dad wielding that axe against the pigeons, but they were scared of her.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what her life was like.
No, and to be fair, I mean, I kind of think, well, if she'd have been a different race, what would have happened? If she'd have been a different class and not the daughter, she'd been the maid, she'd have been a man, she'd been a son, what would have happened? It's all these different variants that you just think, oh,
Yeah.
I think it might have turned out very differently.
I do too. I do too. If it were one of the, immigrants who came over from Europe, they wouldn't have been given a pass. Oh, no, of course they didn't do it. The immediate reaction would have been, well, of course they did it. Let's find out how. Not her, not the rich spinster woman.
And that makes me think, actually, Anngelle, about you were telling us a little bit about your advocacy work. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. What a segue.
Skills. I've got skills.
That's something that I've learned more and more about as I have, become more, I guess, acquainted with this true crime space, is that, there are a lot of opportunities there. We tell these stories, we talk about things that happened on someone's worst day. And, there's a lot of responsibility in that. And yeah, I do tell stories. I am part of the true crime community, and I do watch documentaries. I do watch Netflix. I do watch the crime show. So I'm not sitting here in a place where I'm, on the hill looking down at everybody. I'm as much of a consumer of true crime as the next person. But I wanted to make sure that as somebody who's involved in telling these stories of people and, these horrible days in their lives, which, catastrophically affected them forever, I wanted to make sure I was being responsible with that. And, advocating for, and I've learned more as I've gotten to know people, as I've heard from families about whose stories I've told, as I've gotten to know some of these families here where I am in Massachusetts. I just felt that it was very much a part of what I do, and the responsibility extends from telling a story factually and with empathy, trying to, I call it like advocacy in action. Like, I went to a parole hearing recently about, it was the person who was murdered was a 15-year-old girl from my hometown in Massachusetts, my original hometown where I grew up for the first part of my life. She was killed by another teenage boy with a baseball bat. He planned it. He was sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole back when he was sentenced in 1996, we're talking. And subsequently, the courts in the US changed that law to anyone under, any juvenile who was sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole, now can request parole after X amount of years. So her killer, now an adult, got a chance at parole. And the very first parole hearing was in May. So I was there in attendance with a lot of her family members. And for the woman, the girl's name is Beth Brody. She was 15 when she was murdered. I was there to witness firsthand my first parole hearing. It is awful. It is simply awful. So when I say advocacy, I just want to support families in any way possible, whether it's, first, spreading the information, sharing the information about their loved one, talking about it in a responsible way, supporting by going to, advocacy get-togethers, meetups. There's something that happens in New Hampshire, something that happened last year in New Hampshire, something that's happening again this summer in New Hampshire, where family members who have had a loved one go missing or murdered, unsolved, these people have started to get together and go to the district attorney's offices and stand outside and just say, what are you going to do to help us solve our loved ones' cases? So it's just putting that media pressure on, putting this pressure on these agencies and these law enforcement people. Because a lot, and you probably find this too in your work, a lot of families who have had these experiences, whether they have a loved one who's gone missing or a loved one murdered who has been found, a fair amount of these families know who's responsible. However, getting past that to getting law enforcement to act and go after these perpetrators and press charges and take it to trial is a whole other story. Because in New Hampshire particularly, it's not the only state that does this, but New Hampshire, they want to keep their high rating in there. We're a fun place to be, and they don't want to affect tourism, and they want to make sure that their clearance rates are high. I don't know what it is right now, but I know in Massachusetts, the neighboring state where I live, they claim that they solve like 61% of these crimes, that there's like a 40, a 39% unsolved rate. I don't know if that's true.
That seems low.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
I mean, I can understand the police can. I've got a lot of ex-police friends, for obviously with research purposes and things like that for the books, and a lot of them will say, "Yeah, we do know exactly who did it, but we appeal for witnesses to come forward so we can arrest them. And if we have no witness, we can't arrest them." And you can imagine, well, that again, it's the system, isn't it? You don't want innocent people being arrested on a whim, but you also don't want guilty people knocking around just because there isn't anybody brave enough to come forward and actually say what happened. So it's a very difficult, I think, situation generally, but it certainly isn't helped by the lack of, I suppose, transparency within the system. Both of our systems, I mean, UK and US.
And families will say, I met a woman who's part of this New Hampshire coalition who she survived a very brutal attack. She is believed, she's associated with this unknown person that is known here in the States as the Connecticut River Valley Killer, who has, they say, there's a string of murders that they have connected to very possibly being done by this person, this alleged, Connecticut Valley, this killer. And this one woman who survived, they believe she was also part of this killer's work. She didn't even know that she could have an advocate. She's like, wait a second. I can have an advocate, like for my case, like just my case. And hearing stories like that, and then all these people get together and they hear each other's stories and they're like, well, I thought I was the only one that was in this horrible place of my, her, in this woman's case, Jane Brodsky, her crime committed against her unsolved. And all of these family members are like, oh, so there is support for us with my, my murdered sister whose case is just languishing. So that's eye-opening. Things like that is really eye-opening.
It's the stories, isn't it, that don't make the true crime podcasts or the documentaries, or that often are the more shocking, because we've done a couple of times, we've looked at sort of missing children and books that are inspired by the Madeleine McCann case, but actually both of those times that we've looked at those have been really difficult ones to look at, because there's a lot of missing children and most of them do not make the news because they don't fit that profile of being blonde and white and attractive, and the media don't want to tell those stories. And then all of those stories, there are still victims, there are still families who are desperate for answers, and as you're describing, don't often know what their rights are.
Well, it sounds like we have a lot that we can talk about. So, Anngelle, do you think you can come back at some point?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
We can drop down a few more rabbit holes.
There are many.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
I've got another TV recommendation.
Oh,
for Anngelle. Ghosts.
Yeah.
BBC series Ghosts. You would love that.
There is an American one, isn't there?
Yes.
But yeah, Ghosts is so nice.
Oh, there is an American version. I haven't watched the American one.
It's good. It's just different. It's just not the same.
Okay, I might have to watch the American. Maybe we'll do an exchange and then we'll meet up halfway in the tunnel, halfway across the tunnel, just under the Titanic, I think it is. We can meet there and have a little chin wag about it. Yes, where can they find us? Is that what you're going to ask me? We are on all the social medias. No, we're not. We're on TikTok.
Yes, we are.
I say we're on most of them. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, and we're on Instagram at the Red Rabbit Hole Podcast. We also have a Patreon where you can find some exclusive content. Sometimes Pod Lisa's there, sometimes she's not, but it's entertaining anyway. You can also get early access to our next episode on our Patreon, which is definitely worth a look.
Excellent. Anngelle, where can we find you?
Online, crimeofthetruestkind.com. You can follow the show at Crime of the Truest Kind on all the platforms. I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere, just like us, everywhere they want us to
It's
be.
everywhere.
Or don't want us to be. Who knows?
Popping up in your garden. Hello. Come to the podcast.
Well, thank you once again, listeners. I know we've gone well over our time, but we hope you feel like it's worth it with all the details that we've given you and all the true crime nuggets that we've fried. We fry? Am I?
Frying
am I
nuggets.
just? I think I'm eating too much junk food.
I'd love to hear your listeners' take on the Lizzie Borden case, if they feel like our conclusion is fair or if they have other ideas about her guilt or
Well, I
innocence.
think as you kind of came down on my side, Judge Wood, I think it was fair.
What we're actually suggesting is there someone who can do a better
yeah.
job of prosecution than Lisa?
Is there someone that could look better in a wig than us? No. We rock those powdered wigs.
On that note, thank you, listeners. Thank you so much, Anngelle, for joining us, and we'll see you next time down the Red Rabbit Hole.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.